Good morning, my YouTube viewers. Crystal here. I decided to get up this morning and make another video for you. Basically, what I wanted to do is, I wanted to talk about New Zealand and the coronavirus. And the reason why is because yesterday I was looking on Facebook, and they said that New Zealand is lifting their lockdown. They're going down to tier 1, which is essentially no lockdown at all. And basically what they did was, when they started the lockdown, they banned all international travel. And then when they banned all international travel, anybody who was actually coming into the country, they had to self-isolate for 2 weeks. And so they believe that is what help them to overcome their COVID-19. They say they haven't had any COVID-19 in 2 weeks. So I thought, well, it's a good idea to look at New Zealand and see New Zealand's statistics to see if their version of the lockdown has improved. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at New Zealand and compare New Zealand to the UK and see what happened with their statistics, because as of yesterday, which I believe was 5 January 2020, they're calling off the lockdown. They're going down to tier 1. So what I did was I used the data set that I got from Our World in Data. This data set is updated every day. So if you're going to use the data set, you need to make sure that every day you reload it into the computer that you have it on. Now, I understand there's actually a GitHub account where a data set is in a GitHub account, which is uploaded every day, and you can use that. But I don't know what GitHub account that is. So I'm just using the data set from Our World in Data and uploading it into my personal computer every single day. I wrote the program on Google Colab. Google Colab is a free online Jupyter notebook that's got a lot of libraries already installed on it. So that means that all I had to do was import the libraries. And I understand that there's a Google Colab Pro. You can pay $9.99 a month for it, but obviously I haven't got the funds for that, so I just use the free Google Colab and do what I can do on the free version. But if you've got $9.99 to spend every month and you want to use the Pro version, I'm sure it would be worth it, because you can do a lot more with the Pro version than you can the free version. And there's also Kaggle. I believe that you get 4 hours of TensorFlow a week on Kaggle. So if you wanted to use the Kaggle Jupyter Notebook, you could do that. But I don't do that. I just stick mainly with Google Colab. So on this program that I've written on Google Colab, the first thing we do is we import our libraries. So we imported Pandas and NumPy. Those are the 2 main libraries that you're going to need. And then we read the file that we got from Our World in Data into the system. So this file has 192 countries in it, but one of the countries has fallen off. I don't know which one fell off, but one fell off. We look at the info on the file. You can see that it is mostly floats and a few objects. So it's good that it's mostly floats, because it's easier to work with a float than it is an object. What we need to do is we need to convert the date to a date time. And then after we've converted the date to a date time, we need to convert that date to a number, because the model won't accept dates. So here we go. We've got the date that we've converted to a number. So if you go to the very end, you've got the date that's been converted to the number. So you'll be able to use that for your predictions, or I used it for my predictions really. I wanted to be able to check to see which countries were in this data set, so I used coding to get the country, to locate the country, and I converted it to a list. And what I did is every country that wasn't already in the list was appended to the list. And so that gave you 192 countries. But as I said earlier, one of the countries has fallen off, but I don't know which country it was that fell off. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to be able to pick a date to pick off the date that we want to look at. So what we had to do is we had to manipulate the dates. So we imported from date time import date, and from date time import time delta. We got today's date, and that was yesterday, so it was 5 January 2021. And then we got yesterday, which was the day before that, so that was 4 January 2021. We got the last date, which was the maximum date on the CSV file. And the reason why I had to do the today and the yesterday is because on one of the mornings, what they had done was they had entered a date into the CSV file when they hadn't, and when that date actually hadn't elapsed. And because of that, I had to go ahead and enter this extra code in here as a fail-safe. And then what we did was we used an if, and else statement. So if the last day equals yesterday, last day equals yesterday. If the last date is greater than yesterday, last date equals yesterday. And if the last date else, last date equals last date, and you print last date. So we've got the last date. So the last date was January 4th, 2021. So that meant that the last date was yesterday. So let's see what it says here. It says if last date equals yesterday, then the last date was yesterday. So since it was January 4th, 2021, that means the last date equals yesterday. Now what we did was we just made some plots. So we've got a plot of new cases, and we've got a plot of new deaths. We plotted a graph based upon the location, and that's worldwide. So we had a plot on new cases worldwide and a plot on new deaths worldwide. So you can look at that. We did a box plot on the continent, so you can see all the new cases in each continent. And what we're looking at is New Zealand, and New Zealand is actually in Oceania. We did a plot on the new deaths per continent, and we're looking at Oceania as well for New Zealand. Now what we've done is we've made a heat map. So if you like heat maps and you know how to analyze them, well, I've got a heat map for you as well that you can look at and analyze how all of the different independent variables fit in with the dependent variables. So now what we've done is we have filtered out the United Kingdom, so you can see the United Kingdom, which is, we're going to be comparing the United Kingdom to New Zealand. So you can see that the first date was 2020, January 31st. And with the United Kingdom, you can see the new date, the new cases was about close to 59,000 new cases yesterday. So that's a lot. And New deaths was 410, so that's a lot. And then yesterday, someone put on Facebook that her sister had died of COVID. So this is a very serious illness. It's a lot more serious than some people are making out, because some people are saying it's no worse than the flu. Well, for some people, it's no worse than the flu, but for some people, it's very debilitating. And this woman, who's my friend on Facebook, I never met her personally. Her sister has died of COVID, so I think that she would disagree that COVID is no worse than the flu. But what I'm hoping is, I'm hoping that it mutates to a non-malignant form. So it's just an irritant rather than a killer. That's what I'm hoping. So we've got all of this information, and you can see in the UK they're not providing a lot of the information. So because they're not providing a lot of the information, it's hard for me to carry out a complete analysis of this country. So they've got the population, which is almost 68 million. They've got a population density. They've got median age is almost 41, and I'm older than that. Median age over 65, age over 70. GDP per capita. So that is something that can be looked at, GDP per capita, to be able to say, well, what, based on the GDP per capita, what is the likelihood that someone's going to fall prey to COVID? Extreme poverty is 0.2, cardiovascular, diabetes, female smokers, male smokers, hand washing facilities, hospital beds per thousand. They have 2.54 hospital beds per thousand, and we were talking about that yesterday. Whereas we were analyzing Japan, and Japan had like, I think it was like 12 hospital beds per thousand. It was like 5 times more hospital beds than the UK. So hospital beds per thousand is going to affect of whether a person is going to die, because if you don't have hospital beds, if you don't have the proper medical equipment, then a person could very well die from this ailment. And you have life expectancy. In the UK, it's about 81, and human development index. So that was it for the UK, because we're going to be comparing New Zealand to the UK. So this is the UK's new cases, and you can see that it's creeping steadily up. You can see that we're in our third lockdown now. And the thing is that this strain of the virus has mutated. We've got the UK strain, or the London strain. And because the strain of the virus has mutated, our new cases are creeping up, and our deaths are creeping up as well. This new strain is a lot more infectious than the previous strain, but I don't know if it's more dangerous or not. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're just going to go down to New Zealand, because we've analyzed these countries before, and there's just no need to keep analyzing them. So you can look at my other videos. We're just going to find New Zealand. So that was the nice thing, me putting that filter in, because you can filter out any country that you want. So if you want to look at a specific country, you can put that filter in to do that. So now we've come to New Zealand. We filtered out New Zealand. They had it says continent is Oceania. It says new cases. It said 5 new cases, as of January 4th, 2021. But that's not what they said in the news yesterday. In the news yesterday, they said that they hadn't had any new cases in 2 weeks. So they were going to go to tier 1, which is almost virtually no lockdown. So here it says there are 5 new cases. So that contradicts what was in the media. The media said that they hadn't had any new cases in 2 weeks. And let's look at the new deaths. They've had 0 new deaths. So that was good. Maybe that's what they were talking about, 0 new deaths. So we go down here to the list and we just look at some other information. They don't give you that much information about the hospitals. Got a population of around 48 million. The median age is 38 almost. So the median age in New Zealand is less than the median age in the UK. They've got the GDP per capita. I mean, that's obviously something that can be looked at. GDP per capita. That might have something to do with whether or not a person is likely to survive. Because I know in the UK, they want to keep the businesses open because they want to keep the money flowing, because we live in a world where we have to pay just to live here. And so people have to work just to stay alive. I know me personally, I have to do that. My boyfriend has to do that. And everybody I know just about has to do that. Hospital beds per thousand is 2.61. So New Zealand has more hospital beds per thousand than the UK, but not much. But that's a good thing to look at, is GDP, life expectancy. So in the New Zealand, they have a GDP of 36,085. I wonder if that's, well, we'll have to look and see what they mean by GDP per capita. Is that pounds or is that dollars? But it's 36,085. That's GDP per capita. So that's per person. So let's go back to the UK and find out GDP per capita. See what they say. GDP per capita is 39, almost 40. So what that means is they want people to produce more. So the GDP per capita may very well have something to do with it, because I know in the UK they want to keep the businesses open. And if they keep the businesses open to keep the GDP up, then you're going to have more likelihood of getting COVID-19. But let's look at Japan, because yesterday we were looking at Japan. Let's see what Japan says under GDP per capita. $39. So Japan's GDP per capita is 39. So all 3 of these GDP per capitas are in the high 30s. So we've analyzed New Zealand, and we had a quick look at Japan. So we'll go down here where it says compare new cases per million to new deaths per million. So this is globally. So you can see that we have a lot more new cases than we do new deaths. And this is new cases per million over new deaths per million. So you can see we have a lot more new cases than we have new deaths. And that was that's globally. This is the US and this is the UK. So the US and the UK are similar. So now what we're going to do is we're going to compare the different countries. And what you have to do to compare the countries is you have to make all the data sets the same. And what happened was they started collecting data on the different countries at different days. So in order to make all the data sets the same, you have to remove the rows. You have to remove to make all the rows exactly the same. So in the UK, we removed the first 28 rows. And I think in New Zealand, they didn't actually start taking statistics until later. So I don't think that you had to remove any rows from New Zealand because they started taking it later. And since after we've made the files compatible with each other, then what you have to do is you have to set up variables for each country that you're analyzing. So what we did was we took the date and we used the value of the date in the UK, and it has to be the values, because if you don't use the values, then it just won't work. So date equals revised UK COV19 date dot values. And then so we took new cases per million and new deaths per million, and we created variables for that for each country. And so we've come over here to UK, and we've got one in here for New Zealand as well, somewhere. And then what we've done is we've merged all of these different data sets together, and you can see how I've merged the different data sets together to try to get the coding to fit on one page. So I've used this little backwards backslash to get the coding to fit on one page, so that way you'll know what we were doing. So that's your data frame. And then what we've done is we've checked to see if there are any null values. And there were loads of null values, but they're all in numeric columns. So what we did was we just filled all the null values with 0. And now what we've done is we're comparing New Zealand with UK. So New Zealand is blue and the UK is amber. You can see that the UK has had a lot more new cases per million than New Zealand, and I think that is something to do with the fact that New Zealand's lockdown was a lot harsher because they banned international travel, and when they banned international travel, they said everybody coming into the country, they have to self-isolate for 2 weeks, and I believe that that was enforced. And because it was enforced, they were able to keep coronavirus from actually entering the country. And the UK did it a lot differently. I mean, in the UK, we still had a lockdown, but they didn't ban international travel. And I think they probably weren't as strict on the isolation, which meant that people were still taking the coronavirus out of the country, and the coronavirus was still coming into the country. And so now we've got new deaths per million, so you can look and see that New Zealand, their new deaths per million are minimal, whereas the UK's it's quite large. You can see that. That's why we're in our third lockdown in 10 months, because we're trying to contain this virus. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to go back and check the regular data set. So again, we checked for any null values. We found a lot of null values. And then what we did was we filtered out the object columns, and we replaced all the null values in the object columns with not listed. And then after we replaced all of the null values with the not object columns as not listed, we filled everything else with zeros. So that's this is just an easy trick to get around not having to do every single column, because it had, like, I think it was 52 columns to start with, and you don't want to have to fill. It's going to be more labor intensive to fill every column than it is going to be just to do a blanket. So I did a blanket. Now what we've done is we've taken the object columns and we put them under an ordinal encoder. And after we've ordinal encoded our object columns, we've defined our X, Y. So your Y is new deaths, and your X is your train file with a whole bunch of columns dropped. And you can look and see which columns were dropped. Standard scalar, we've standard scaled our X, so you can see Y and you can see X is now an array. And now what we've done is we split our training set up for training and validation. And we selected our model. I selected HISS gradient boosting regressor because this is a model that was designed just specifically for large data sets. We predict on we've got 99.51% accuracy on the training and fitting, and then we predict on our validation set, and we had 88.51% accuracy, so that's good. I've created a little graph. I know the graph doesn't look very good, but it gives you an opportunity to compare the predicted values with the actual values. And then now what we do is we create our test set. So we use this last day and as the test set. And so the last day was 20/21/01/05, and checked for any null values. And we replaced the null values in the same manner that we replaced the null values in the train set. So we dropped the date because we've gotten the date earlier on in the program. We isolate the object columns. Every null value in the object column says it's not listed. And then after we've done that, we fill all of the remaining null values with 0. So that's a quick and easy way to replace your null values, because fortunately we didn't have that many object columns, but we have loads of null values. So now we've got our test file. You can see that the date has been dropped from the test file, but you can come over here to the end and you can see that we've still got date num. So we put all of the object columns in an ordinal encoder, and we do that just exactly the same way that we did with the test file. And we define our X test. So we drop the ISO code, you don't need that. And the X test is exactly the same format as the X. So we put the X test on a standard scalar, so it's now become an array. Now we predict on our X test, and when we predict on our X test, we predict on the data frame. And then if you wanted to, you could compare the prediction with the results that we actually got today. And it's actually too early in the morning for our World in Data CSV file to be updated, but when it is updated, I am going to reload it into my computer and use the most current version for when I make my blog post. So when I make my blog post, I will actually give you the web address for this program that I've written. So if you want to get the web address, then you'll need to look at the program. So that concludes this video. If you like my video, please like, subscribe, and share. If you want to keep receiving my videos, then please press the bell button, because I was watching a YouTube video and it said that if you don't watch the videos, then what YouTube will do is they'll just take you off of the subscription. So that you can keep getting the videos, you need to go ahead and watch them. If you like my work and you want to leave a donation, I've got my email address to my PayPal account in the description box down below. The reason why is because I don't have enough subscribers, so the only way that I can make any money on this account is to ask for donations. And if you like my videos, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching my video, and I look forward to making new videos for you in the future to watch.